afternoon program. First up, we will have Mr. Mike Gozalez give us a talk about why meritocracy is good for America and all Americans. Mr. Mike Gozalez is the Angeles T. Arredondo Inclusive Senior Fellow at the Heritage Foundation, focusing on identity politics, critical race theory, multiculturalism, assimilation, education, and foreign policy. He spent nearly 20 years as a journalist, reporting from Europe, Asia, and Latin America. Gozalez served in President George W. Bush's administration and was a member of President Donald Trump's 1776 mission. He holds a bachelor's degree from Emerson College and an MBA from Columbus Business School. Let's welcome Mr. Mike Gozalez.
Thank you. I'm not watching my son's baseball game. I'm timing myself. Make sure that I don't go over 15 minutes. I think this is a fantastic group. My wife said, "Why are you working on a Saturday? Why are you leaving the house and going to Washington? You hate going to Washington on weekends." I do. Trust me. I don't want to be here at all. I want to be out in the sticks where I live, with trees and raccoons and deer. But I made it here for you because I think this is a very important group with a very important task. And I know Mike for a long time. Mike is a winner. He doesn't leave you alone. Don't ever give him your card or your phone number. That's a winner right there. So my fellow Americans, I'm here to talk to you about meritocracy, which is so important to you. It's a kind of a forgotten concept in American life. First, I'll discuss what meritocracy is and how our society has recently moved away from it. Then I'll talk about why this matters and why you should care that our society no longer can be considered a full meritocracy. And then I'll finally talk to you about the deeper causes of the issue. When I say meritocracy, I mean a society in which people's success depends on their innate abilities and their work ethic. And on one more thing, not just their innate abilities and their work ethic, but their family structure. And this is something that when you compare groups of Americans side by side, you get a sense as to why one group may succeed and another one group may not succeed. And now this is not a cultural attack on any other group, but these are practices that all Americans should copy. We should all strive to have the intact family structures that Asian Americans have. And actually, Asian Americans don't all have equal family structures. So Chinese Americans, because they're mostly first generation that is the immigrant, and second generation the child of the immigrant, and that's like 93% of Chinese Americans, they have better family structures than more Americanized Asian Americans who have been here 4 or 5 generations. So when I say meritocracy, I mean that. Not something based on skin color, sexuality, or oppressed status. There's a reason I say we have forgotten this idea. We have become enthralled with the idea that equality means something else. It's based on skin color. Equality in its truest sense does not mean equality of outcome, but it means equality of opportunity. And why does that difference matter? Because there's an inherent tension. This is something that you need to understand. An inherent tension between liberty and equality. People have different abilities and priorities. So if people are free, there will be a natural inequality of outcomes. If we take away liberty, we can only achieve equality of outcomes by taking away liberty, and not even then. We've all seen this happen. Racial preferences in university admissions and other endeavors, which some call affirmative action, is just one example in the name of equality. Schools used to admit students who perform worse on every objective standard simply because of their race. This is literally the definition of discrimination. and infringement on liberties. Thank God the Supreme Court acted as it did, mainly thanks to the efforts of people in this group. You worked very, very hard to make sure the Supreme Court did the right thing. I think America owes you a debt of gratitude for doing what you did. You really helped improve your country. So we have reached the point where we were rejecting objective criteria and other measures, like standardized testing, gifted middle school programs, and programs switched from basing acceptance on test performance to using lottery. We've seen this in many places. We've seen it at Jefferson High in Virginia, for example. Many universities stopped using SAT scores for admissions. Med schools were happy to settle for students with lower GPAs as long as the students check the right identity box. If something produces disparate outcomes, society labels it racist, even if there's no racist intent. And you cannot have racism without intent. If you think about it, racism only has to require intent. We have come in the society to reject the idea that individuals, they're equal in rights, are not equal in abilities. We're naturally different. And because we're naturally different, we're going to naturally attain different outcomes. But why is it so bad that we try to achieve equal outcomes? Don't we want equal outcomes? No, we don't. You almost look to Alexis de Tocqueville, who a French writer who wrote about America very early on in America's age, in the 1830s. And he said there was a manly taste for equality and a depraved taste for equality. For de Tocqueville, a manly taste is one in which one seeks equality by trying to raise those at the bottom to the level of those at the top. A depraved taste is one in which does the opposite. One tries to reach equality by taking those at the top to the bottom. Our society does the latter too much, and that hurts everybody. There's an old joke. I grew up in Europe. I was talking to Shiva and Flea earlier about where I grew up. I was born in Cuba, but then I grew up in Europe, and I've lived in Europe many years. And there's an old joke that has to do with the difference between Americans and Europeans. And one is an American is watching a car go by. It's a really nice car, and the American thinks, one day if I work really hard, I'm going to be able to buy a car just like that and get in that car. And the car keeps going and passes in front of a Frenchman, and the Frenchman looks at this, takes a puff of his chitan and says, one day if I work really hard, I'm going to make that guy get out of that car. And that is the difference, really. And we want to have the American style, not the French style. Thomas Jefferson famously thought that the community should pay for the education of the gifted. And there was a reason for this. When the best and the brightest are allowed to succeed, everyone ends up doing better. We have the same opportunity to learn, to achieve. They will develop new medicines, new tools, new technologies that then benefit not just themselves, but benefit all of us. We have all benefited greatly from, for example, Bill Gates. I don't like Bill Gates. I don't like Jeff Bezos. I don't like many individually, but they created many things that have improved our lives. We have to admit that. To quote a very widely read essay on the different levels of IQ, which was very popular about 15 years ago, if you direct the brightest and the hardest, if you direct the brightest to the hardest tasks, you will solve problems more quickly in your society. Meritocracy also allows for the division of labor. It recognizes that people are gifted in different areas, and that in freedom, they will steer themselves towards the areas in which they're most equally qualified to succeed. This allows society to maximize its potential in every area, since the best people end up in all those areas. Those best at farming, and with a love to do farming, those will do farming. Those best at research will do research. Those best at medicine will do medicine. In a meritocracy, it doesn't matter whether your doctor is a woman, a man, black or white. It just matters that your doctor can fix your problems, can cure what ails you. This is why across the board, free societies fare better economically than do dictatorships. Free societies leave room for the best and the brightest to achieve success instead of standing in their way. Today, everyday Americans, all Americans, live better than royalty lived 100 years ago. And this is because we believed in the idea that society should be based not on an aristocracy of such characteristics as birth, wealth, or skin color, but a natural aristocracy of merit. This does not mean that we abandon the idea, the programs to help the truly needy. We have a societal consensus on needs-based policy. What we must do for the sake of all is get out of the way of those whose inventions, hard work, and talent will improve the lives of all, including the truly needy. The founding fathers understood this tension between freedom and equality, and there is a tension between freedom and equality of outcomes. They understood that though people are created equal before God and the law and have equal rights, they're not equal in ability. So they intentionally created a society where the aristocracy is one of intelligence, ability, and hard work. One where even the poorest born person can rise to the top as long as he's willing to work hard. So not only is meritocracy better for the whole of society, but it's better for the individuals as well. Meritocracy benefits society and individuals by ensuring that people end up in positions for which they're competent. The gentleman who spoke before lunch talked about mismatch theory, and that is a very real thing, as he was able to demonstrate with the data that he showed. Students admitted to colleges solely because of racial preferences end up struggling and falling behind, and they end up filled with grievances. They end up very upset. That is, as I said, called mismatch theory. Likewise, employees hired solely because of their diversity status end up lost and confused. In a meritocracy where people are admitted or hired based on ability, no one is forced into a position for which they are incompetent, allowing society to function that much better. And the reason why we have to be kind to the people who disagree with us, right? When we have to look at, people are not necessarily evil. They have a faulty understanding of equality. They think that if there's a disparity in outcome between groups, that is, let's take the group of Chinese Americans, if they do better than African Americans, and that is borne out in the data, they say, well, that's systemic racism. That is prima facie evidence of systemic racism. The folks behind critical race theory will tell you this, and they feel no urge to prove it. There's nothing in the social sciences that says that systemic racism, whatever that is, causes these disparities. And they affirm it, and we're supposed to just buy it and go along with it. What is true, if you look at the data, for example, if you break down African Americans and you look at Ghanaian Americans and Nigerian Americans or West Indian Americans, they actually, they have retained an intact family, and they do much better. The disparities between Nigerian Americans and white Americans, I know they're crazy, white Americans includes a lot of different people. If you look at the disparities in median household income between Nigerian Americans and white Americans, it's very little. Sometimes Nigerian Americans do better. And look at Indian Americans. I think their median household income is $121,000 a year, whereas the white household income is, I think, $72,000 or thereabouts. There's a more sinister reason for meritocracy. You have to ask the question that the Romans asked, cui bono? Who benefits from weakening American society? The answer is obvious: American enemies. By enemies, I mean internal enemies and external enemies. We have internal enemies that do not like American society. I've written books about this. They want to dismantle American society from within. The Marxist dogma teaches that everyone falls into the oppressed versus the oppressor category. The ideology framework leaves no room for meritocracy. If someone succeeds, it's not because of their own abilities, but because they're an oppressor class and a member of a privileged class. If someone fails, it is because they've been oppressed by the social structure and those in power. That's a very easy explanation that gets you nothing and does not make anybody succeed. And for the Marxists, there's only one solution to this problem: the complete destruction of society itself. And there are external enemies. I just published a paper this week, and I have a piece in the Examiner today. I had an article in the New York Post yesterday, and another one on Fox News on Monday. If you look at the groups that have been destroying our colleges and campuses and taking over critical structures in American society, in cities, they're financed by people very close to the Chinese Communist Party. There's particularly one donor who lives in Shanghai. Neville Roy Singham, who's very, very close to the CCP. He finances a lot of these groups. So our enemies are benefiting from this. Now, I'll talk to you about meritocracy because I think it's very important to your lives, to the things you do. But I was talking to She Van Fleet there, a great human being, a great American. I highly recommend her book. And I want to leave you with this thought. Your children, you have fought very hard for meritocracy, and as well you should, and the country owes you a favor, owes you thanks. As your children begin to get into top schools, make sure your children are not corrupted by these schools. Make sure your children, and this is hard work. I have 2 children, one just graduated. I have a daughter in college now, and I have a son who's about to enter college. I make their lives difficult every night. What did you study? What's the teacher telling you? And I urge you to do the same. As your children rightly enter the Ivy League schools, rightly enter competitive schools, because we hope to have a more level playing field now. And if they deserve to get in, my God, they need to get in. Don't let Cornell and Columbia and Harvard and Princeton corrupt your children and teach them the things that are going to destroy our society. You have already helped American society. You have already helped your country. You may have to be called upon to help your country once again. Thank you.